the 5-year time frame.
Real quick, whoever the host is, can you, I think Kurt is trying to get into the meeting, but he said he had to get in. Can someone look and let him in?
Yes, sorry about that, Nick.
Yeah. Just give,
sorry.
if he can get in, then I'll just, I'll go into Mike's question there a little bit.
Kurt.
It looks like he's there now.
Morning, Kurt.
Yeah, I see Kurt now.
Yeah, Mike, just to kind of answer your question.
What is happening here, man?
The on-site parcel, the on-site mitigation preserve is how we kind of refer to these things. That there's a minimum, now that's a minimum of 5 years of monitoring. Now that's just dependent on whether they meet the criteria that was outlined in the permit for those pieces. But they are coming up on their last year, and I have told them that there was still work to be done out there. I'm talking about GL. I've had conversations with them about this as well. That there's still work to be done out there. And usually I like to see a preserve a little further along and a little better. Not to say that it looks bad, but there are certain areas out there that still are trouble, hot spots for exotic vegetation, and their creation marshes out there are not as far along as I like. It's mostly open water in the summertime out there, and it should be more filled in.
Can you guys hear me? I'm not able to hear you guys if you guys are speaking.
Kurt, we can hear you.
Here, I'll text Kurt that we can hear him. But getting back into the monitoring. So what happens, let's just say in a perfect world, after 5 years, everything is complete. I will come out, or district staff, it most likely will be me, will come out, we'll inspect the preserve, make sure everything looks good. And then you get what's called a final sign off, which means the monitoring of that preserve is over. However, there's a perpetual maintenance requirement that is in place, and that's in a special condition in the permit. And what that means is the permittee, or the operating entity, as it is in this standpoint, is responsible for maintaining that preserve, meaning having a contractor go through there. Usually it's just an annual thing. With the preserves as large as they are, you really can't get away with a biannual. That's not going to work. There are going to be too many exotics that pop up in the meantime. And basically the thought is that what you start with in a baseline condition, before there were houses out there or anything, that whole area was almost solid Melaleuca. So it's come a long way, and I walked it all then too. I used to work with Passerella. I'm very familiar with a lot of these projects out here. And where it is now and where it was is 100 times better. But it still requires work to maintain that. And that's what the perpetual maintenance requirement is for, is that we don't let something slip back into, what it was. Because trust me, it costs a lot more money to fix the problem than it is to just continually maintain it. So on the offsite piece, now that's a little different out there, in the sense that it's still being monitored, but you didn't have to plant that area. So you didn't have a huge planting cost that was associated with that. I think that's, what did I say, Nick? I think that's got 3 years left out there, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that's what I looked up, and I don't foresee any reason why that one won't be signed off in the 5-year monitoring period.
Okay.
Now, the issue with...
Well, I'm sorry, what section are you referring to as being the offsite?
That's section 12. Section 12
okay.
Offsite mitigation project. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but I don't think that will have any issue out there with as far as sign off goes from monitoring. I was out there and it looks really, really good. The issue with the offsite piece is access and time of year you can access it. Obviously in the summertime, it's just too wet to get out there. So that's the only issue I see with that one. But that's kind of in a nutshell what the monitoring and then the perpetual maintenance requirement is.
Hey, Matt,
Yes, sir.
have you advised GL that monitoring may be required to continue on the on-site piece?
Yes, I have spoken to them about that already. They were going to try to put a lot of money into those marsh areas to plant them, and they did plant them, and they do look a lot better. And you know, there were some exotics that popped up when I spoke to them that they couldn't treat because of whatever issues they were having. I mean, that's it is what it is. But so I've kind of given them a little bit of extra time to get that work done, to get it treated, to make it look good. So that way, when I do go out there, hopefully, I'm very hopeful that it will be signed off.
Do you have the exact date for that?
Yeah, the native area that's within all that, not the created marshes, the whole other area that's out there that's all forested. I don't have an issue with that. So if there is additional monitoring, it would only be for the marshes, and I have told them that as well. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Do you have a date or a month, just so that we can kind of know, you know, when we're going to be put to task of that final inspection? That 1 year out, you said, on the on-site piece?
Let me look at when the report was due, and then I might have a better idea, because I think I was going to give them an extra 60 days or something after the report was due. But let me check that real quick. But if anyone has any questions for Kurt on the stormwater system and what that maintenance entails, they can certainly discuss that with him if there's questions there.
Just one more item. So it is, based on what you said, it seems like the ongoing maintenance is described in the original permit that was issued, I guess, in more detail.
Yeah.
So after the 5-year period, does the permit speak to the ongoing maintenance after the sign off?
It's Nick, it's just basically managing exotics. You have to keep the exotics below a certain threshold. And you know, so you have to go out there, find them and get rid of them so that you don't cross that threshold.
Mike, I was reading in the one of the reports that was sent to us from Passarella. Is it at 80% of Matt, maybe you could answer this. Usually when you sign off, is it at 80% that you're happy with to be able to sign off on the site? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think that's the minimum, is a 80% coverage. That's kind of the minimum.
Okay.
Usually they're higher than that. Usually it's a lot better than that. And everything is seasonally related. You know, obviously in the dry season, kind of in the season we're in now, a lot of the wetland plants are dormant, or there's not as many of them. As it starts raining and the marshes fill up, it becomes more abundant. So I tried to work with them on that as well, as it's all seasonal. You got to monitor at the right time of year if you want to show, you know, that you've got the plants, and they're well aware of that.
Mike, I'm sorry, Matt, can you tell me what was the last year of the report that you received from Passarella? Because the last one we received, the transition, was dated 2019. I mean, I've reached out to GL and they're going to get me any other reports, but he was sort of not telling me the dates of what's already been submitted.
So Barbara, I think I sent you an email last night on this, that all of the reports are available on the South Florida Water Management District website. You have to, it's a bit tricky to get into and a bit tricky to navigate, but actually Matt gave me some tips on how to do that a long time ago. The last report was February of 2022 on section 9, and April of 2022 on section 12. So we're coming up on, you know, as Matt just pointed out, a 5th year report on section 9. That's the on-site. next month, and if he's going to push it out 60 days or something, then it'll be, a month or two after that. And section 12 would be, the next report would be the third annual report, and that would be due sometime in April of 2023.
Okay.
The one,
In your opinion, as it relates to the on-site piece, 1 year left, post sign off, you're saying annual, obviously mitigation efforts at the right time of the year, is that your recommendation one time a year, and the marsh area only moving forward after that point?
The the forested area there in your section 9, I guess I'm referring to things as on-site and off-site. That's how I look at it. So the on-site mitigation area there, right off, Logan Boulevard, all that whole strip. The forested part of that, I don't have an issue with. Yeah, there's exotic vegetation in it, but overall, the coverage of the native stuff is good. So they wouldn't, in my opinion, need to continue monitoring that. If the marshes aren't meeting success at the end of 5 years, which that success being at least 80% coverage, then I may require them to monitor only the marshes. So that would I was trying to look up dates here as well, but that's kind of where I was going with that. So what you would then have is your perpetual maintenance of the forested area there when the on-site preserve. It would start after the sign off. And again, with preserves as big as they are that you have there, you would have to do it at a minimum annually. There's so much seed source around there with the melaleuca, with the paragrass as a grass they've had an issue with. I mean, I remember when I walked all that stuff when it was farm fields and melaleuca, the paragrass was bad out there. So it's bad on your neighbor's piece, Esplanade, as well. They're fully aware of it. I'm on them as well. So, I don't want you guys to feel like it's just a target on you. That whole area is, it's got a lot of seed source there. So they're well aware of it as well.
Question with reference to GL's bond that you're holding. After those 5 years, will you release that whole amount back to them? And then they will be out of the picture?
Typically, when the property gets transferred to the operating entity, the bond name gets changed, but I think that was part of either an agreement they had with you guys or, the HOA or whoever, I'm not sure. But yes, when monitoring is complete, the bond gets released.
The full
That's
amount?
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So what we've got set up is that after a time zero, this is how, we've got, let's just say we've got $100,000 bond, just make easy whole numbers. After time zero, we usually, if it's meeting the criteria for the reduction, we'll give the permittee a 35% reduction. That's after the time zero. So basically what that means is all the exotics have been treated and the plants, if they were required, have been planted. And then after the second annual monitoring event, assuming they're meeting the success for that time period, they can get an additional 15% reduction. The final 50% or the final release of all bond is at the end of the 5 years. Now, it's just assurance that the work gets done. In my time of being at the district and being on the private side, I've never seen the district actually use that bond money or make it be used. So it's just kind of a placeholder. But yes, you're correct. At the end of the 5 years, all of the remaining funds are released.
Do the reporting requirements at the end of 5 years change, or would we expect GL to remain engaged with Passarella, or does that just all go away and it's just annual inspections, or how's it? How do you guys make sure that you're holding us to task?
Well, we go into what we call our perpetual inspection phase, which is basically 2 years for us. Now, there are some problem children preserves out there that I inspect more frequently. But the requirement for us is 2 years. There is no requirement for you. Your requirement is to treat it. You don't have to provide us with any monitoring or any reporting. Now, certainly if you want to be very proactive, you can. There are permittees who provided, well, I should say permittee. There's only one that I know that has provided like perpetual maintenance reports that show that the work is being done and that there's a contractor that's working on it. That's very proactive. That's not a bad thing, but you know, it's more money certainly more money there to have that be done.
And by perpetual, you mean 2 years?
No,
No, forever.
No,
Forever.
perpetual
I know
means
you,
forever.
you said you're perpetual, but you said
Forever.
generally you're going to inspect for 2 years unless it's a
Yes,
problem
that's
child area. Yeah.
yes,
area.
that is our internal inspection time frame. When something is in the perpetual phase, if you will, we're required every 2 years to go inspect it. But like I said, there are some problem child projects out there that get inspected more frequently than that.
so Nick, it's every 2 years, not,
Every 2 years, not for 2 years, every 2 years.
Right.
Got it.
right,
Got it.
right.
Matt, are there any non-compliance letters out there on any of these properties that we're not aware of that may have gone to GL? Because I know that prior to our transition that happened, and unfortunately, we as residents didn't know about it for a year.
Let me just search real quick. I don't think the project is in non-compliance now, but I'll have to look and see. Let me just check real quick.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Last I looked, Barbara, there weren't. There was one that was recently written, but then it was cleared.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Guys, are we clear that, you know, on our mitigation and maintenance frequencies as it relates to inside this 5-year period and where we are inside this 5-year period? So where, you know, on parcel 12, we're 2 years in with 3 years left or about, obviously there's always, I guess there would be diminishing concerns as time goes on and mitigation efforts start to take hold. But are we clear on like the frequency going forward with our contractor, you know, as it relates to parcel 12? Or are we going to totally leave it up to the vendor to determine? I mean, I would like to, you know, when we sit down with them, have enough information on our side, you know, to kind of set the table.
Yeah.
I don't know much about Solitude. From what I'm hearing down at the office is that they're not providing us with enough reports or anything. Matt, does our vendors send you reports at all on a whatever period of time they do, you know, any type of inspections?
They don't send me anything. That's not a requirement. Usually the environmental consultant is the one that is following up with them and kind of checking up on their work. I guess it just depends what's in their budget. You know what I mean? If they're not budgeted to do that, then they probably aren't doing it either. I don't know.
Okay.
As far as, yeah, that goes, that's not a bad idea to request reports, what they're treating, how many days they've been on site, you know, how much chemical they're using, because they're billing for all of those things. So you got to understand, you know, that'll help you understand the cost that's involved. The idea is that obviously the most money that's spent is in the baseline or the initial treatment when all those exotics are there, and you know, it costs hundreds of thousands, if not more, to get that cleaned up. And the idea is over time, that cost goes down and down and down because there theoretically should be less exotics. So they're using less chemical. Because I think mostly what they're charging for is chemical. And I've heard the cost of chemical has basically doubled.
Wow. Okay.
Your opinion, Matt, you know, being in year 2/almost 3 on this parcel 12, I mean, can you even speak to the frequency of treatment in in a parcel that's, 2-3 years in?
Well, out there, what that was before was almost solid melaleuca. So what happened was is they mechanically removed it and mulched it. That helped. So now what they're doing is treating all the resprouting stuff that's coming in. I can't speak to frequency. I don't know how long that takes. I can tell you that it's probably a couple days worth of work of them being out there. Again, depending on weather, is the weather right for them to be out there? Is it still too wet? So they can probably only do most of that work this time of year. The problem with that is you go all summer with nothing out there and you can get some, pop-ups of vegetation, but you're not, more than likely, you're never going to be at a 0% exotic coverage, right? I mean, there's just too much seed source. That's why they're called invasives. They're just too invasive. You're just never going to get rid of all of them, especially at this scale of a property. Now, if we're talking a 1 acre piece, yeah, of course, but this is 300 something acres. And, to the east of there, it's actually district land. It's part of the crew lands. They've got melaleuca on your eastern property boundary there. And I've actually tried to coordinate with the district on getting through out there to treat that, but I never heard back. GL was fine with them going out there because, hey, it meant that there would no longer be exotics on your border, but I never did hear back. That's a totally different division, so I don't have any say in anything of that. But yeah, it's, given the size of that, it's probably at least a day or two worth of work out there just to walk the whole thing,
That being said, it's not an annual, but probably semi-annual because of the seed source and the fact that there's hot spots that pop up throughout the summer. So
yeah, I mean, in some contractors will put into their contract that it's, multiple visits a year, whether that's a semi-annual. It just depends on the wording and how they want to do that. Some of the more exotic, let's say infested areas that have a lot of resprouts, that will be a semi-annual event where they'll actually go out there twice a year and spend multiple days doing that work. And there's some others that are basically out there all the time, because of just usually we're talking, large scale 1,000-acre preserves that require that much work. But like I said, as time goes on and the exotic coverage becomes less and less, theoretically, the cost should go down. The issue that they've had as of late is just the cost of the chemical has gotten ridiculous.
I actually have a hard stop in a bit, in about, well, I gotta hit the road. Maybe we could pivot to Kurt with any questions regarding the, Kurt, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I'm not exactly certain, Kurt. Again, I'm a new resident. I'm new to the committee as well, so I'm not exactly certain, Kurt, what your capacity is. I know it's having to do, I guess, is it stormwater? Can you hear me?
Yes. Would you have to tell you like what we look for in regards to the districts?
Well, I mean, I'm not clear on. I mean, Mike probably knows a lot more about this. So, Mike, are you clear on?
I don't, Nick. I never looked at the stormwater stuff at all, so I'm completely in the dark on that one.
Okay, so what are our, again, this is a facts finding mission here. What are our obligations as it relates to Kurt, what you oversee and what you do for?
So in regards to your stormwater management system, your system was already certified back in 2018, and it was transferred to the HOA in 2020. So the HOA and I think there's a co-permittee who are responsible for maintaining the system. So since the project's already been certified, we only really go out there when we get like complaints or anything like that, because we no longer inspect it on the engineering side. So basically what we look for is your lake banks, make sure that there's no erosion, no major erosion, drop off conditions. I think 9 inches is the tolerance. If there is any erosion that's greater than 9 inches, then we're gonna have to ask the HOA or whoever's responsible to take corrective action to make sure that there's no huge erosion spots in the banks so that there is no safety issues or anything like that out there.
And how would you become aware of those erosion, those instances of erosion? Do you do on-site inspections? Is it because someone files a complaint or calls your office?
Correct. So for the stormwater management side of things, once the project is certified by the engineer, we no longer inspect it unless someone calls and complains. And then when we go out there, if we see there's any erosion, we're like, hey, this needs to be addressed and corrected. So that's how we, on this side, engineering side, will find those issues out there.
Yeah, the engineers don't do perpetual inspections, like he said. If they get a complaint, they check on it. And I can tell you that to fix lake banks is not cheap.
Yeah.
What can we do? What can we do to make sure? Was it just keep an eye on it? If you notice any erosion, you notice any drop off, to kind of jump on it. I mean, should we have maybe a team within our own HOA? You know, take a walk and kind of set a schedule just to walk the banks to make sure there's no drop off, there's no erosion. That way we get out ahead of it if we notice it, so it doesn't become a large cost to the HOA.
Yes, that's a good idea. I think there is a rule in the applicant's handbook that we have here that says that the HOAs should actually perform annual inspections to make sure that their stormwater management system is functioning as intended. I could probably pull that rule up and send it to you guys as well. But yes, that's a good idea to have people go out there and take a look at your lake banks to make sure that the erosion doesn't get out of control.
Okay.
We're referring to the lake banks within our community? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so basically,
also-
I mean, we
Right.
have Solitude who does our lakes now, so should they not be responsible for letting us know that?
You could let them know. I'm not too sure what their purview is, like what they are responsible for entirely. I'm not familiar with Solitude, but they could let you know if there's developing erosion on your lake banks,
Okay.
and then you guys could jump on it.
Yeah, just if you could share that rule with us, we'll then be able to better manage their side. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's not passive by any means, but it doesn't seem like it's too labor intensive, because we're really more, it's a young community, right? So we're probably just in a watchful eye phase, not too many repairs, not too many maintenance issues. So just send us that
Right.
rule, and that'd be great. I appreciate it.
Yes. Also, I know you said that you guys should only maintain the lakes within your community, but just so you know, there is a pond to the east that takes water from the roadway, and I believe that is under your permit as well. So you guys want to make sure that that pond is being maintained as well. I'm not too sure if you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, but
It's the one
pull
right
up the
there as you
plans
come
and-
down Logan.
Yeah, it's in 9. Yeah, right. That's section 9.
Yeah, it's the one that's on the left-hand side of Logan, just before you hit the Lee County line.
Correct.
Well, again, I appreciate Kurt, Matt, your time today, everybody who jumped on the Zoom. It's a lot to take in, a lot to understand. It's obviously not our forte, but you guys kind of help us understand it. You really speak in very clear and plain language for us. Mike, what you did, I dug into what you did, even at the transition and the drilling down on the contract with Lake and Wetland Management at the time. The work was excellent. So I think we're in a good spot to, kind of gather our thoughts, the information, maybe have a few more conversations or questions that go back and forth between Matt and Kurt, but to then sit down and, take a look at what we're paying for, who we're actually using, and to maybe, kind of take some fat out of that budget item. So
I have one
Okay.
last question, if I can, for Matt. Matt, the property that's in Henry County, I mean, they say that there's a letter that was sent to us telling us that we no longer had to do that, and everybody's been trying to get a copy of this letter. How do we get that? Nobody seems to have it. GL doesn't have it. We've never been received it.
I think the Hendry County thing was something that was done for the Army Corps of Engineers for
Right.
Panther. So that
Right.
would not have been a state
Oh,
letter or requirement. So I don't have it either. Your best bet would be to get the environmental consultant to send it to you, because I would almost certainly
Okay.
bet they have it.
Okay,
I mean, like I said, if you have questions, they've been on, and like I said, I mean, I used to work for Passarella back in the day, and I walked all this stuff when it was farm fields in Melaleuca. So
Uh-huh.
they've been intrinsically involved in this project for years now. So any documentation that you may be looking for, they would be a good source to reach out
Okay.
to.
We'll check that. Okay. I could probably ask GL to do that. Okay,
Yeah, or if we could probably dig in and get a contact at Pastorella and just kind of, get a little
I
deeper.
have a number on them, and I have a name on them, so I'll reach out to them, find out. Okay. Well, thank
Everybody?
you guys for all your help. We really appreciate it. It sort of gives at
Yeah.
least us a better direction of where we're
Yeah,
going.
you're welcome. And if there's future questions, don't hesitate to ask us. And part of your stormwater system, and Kurt can certainly speak more to this than I could, is making sure all the inlets are clean and pipes. I know I've seen some communities who bring in the big vacuum trucks and suck out the sediment and all that, because you don't want to find out your stormwater system's back up when a hurricane's coming
Right.
or when it's the rainy season. That's you don't want to do it then. So be proactive about that as you're being proactive about treating exotics, and I think everything will be all right.
Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
appreciate that.
Okay, guys, I got to hop.
Thanks, everybody. That's okay.
Thank